So we'll read through their actual. Which one am I looking at? No, that's the help and FAQ. We don't want that. The Oh, I have that page open 3 times. Excellent. Right, so this is their little spiel, right? We're excited to announce a new creator tool that we've been developing over the past year. So that's a bit of a surprise in itself that they've been working on it for a year. We know how important music is to your creative process and have heard how frustrating it is to understand and navigate the complex and evolving music ecosystem. It's actually getting less complex, so the distributors and publishers are definitely getting better at kind of recognizing, particularly online uses of music, and licensing has been adjusted, to reflect that. So if you want to do a cover, you can do that now without having to procure a license, provided it's a live stream only that you're not monetizing. Right? That's a massive improvement from the previous versions of that. YouTube don't necessarily need to worry about it because they've got stuff wired in that can kind of track stuff properly. Same with Instagram, I think. So it's not so much a big deal for them as it is for elsewhere. Soundtrack gives you a curated collection of rights cleared music and integrates with your streaming software, which is the important bit, right? To separate your audio sources, allowing you to keep your channel safe while you create compelling content and grow as a creator. Now, where this will fall over will be for consoles, so that's going to be a something right there, and we'll get to that in a bit. Stream worry-free. Soundtrack's vast library of songs from fresh independent artists are all cleared for worldwide listening during your live streams. Music from Soundtrack is separated into its own audio channels so that you can play music on stream without worrying about your archives being muted or receiving strikes against your Twitch channel or wherever else you may go. That last bit isn't actually accurate, but we'll come back to that too. They'll actually call it out themselves a little bit down the track. Highly curated music library. From the latest electronic and dance music in our Sound playlist to chilled out lo-fi beats in our Beats to Stream to playlist and everything in between, the Soundtrack library has a diverse set of artists and genres to stream with. Artists include Above and Beyond, MXM Toon, Porter Robinson, RAC, Swam, and many more. I don't know who any of those are. Playlists and stations are curated by Twitch music curation staff, as well as select streamers and industry partners to make sure whatever style of music you're looking to add to your stream is at your fingertips, ready for you to press play. Our curation team will be expanding our content offering with new playlists and stations regularly. Soundtrack by Twitch beta, label, and distribution partners will ignore that for a tick because they're listed out a little bit less brandedly on in the help content, which will be a bit easier to read out. To get Soundtrack into the hands of creators as soon as possible, we're releasing an early version today that is compatible with OBS Studio version 26, or later on PC, Twitch Studio, and Streamlabs OBS compatibility will be coming soon. Alright, cool. They've done a weird punctuation there. Meaning OBS itself, you'll be able to pipe it into. Twitch Studio, Streamlabs OBS will be down the line a little bit. Shouldn't be too far off though. They'll do some basic testing. Should only be a couple of weeks away, I reckon. If they've been working on it a year, they'll have already have done some. If you want to try a Soundtrack and help shape the future experience for creators, please join the waitlist, choose your streaming software, and keep an eye on your email for an invite with download instructions. Are you a musician, label, or publisher? Visit our help page to learn how you can get your music in Soundtrack. So, that's the announcement spiel, right? But you've got quite a bit more in the help page and FAQ stuff, and a lot of it's stupidly useful, and a lot of it gives you at least a basic kind of understanding of how the licensing works as well, and makes sort of fairly clear the restrictions on the licensing that they've got for what it is that they're doing so far. So, what is a Soundtrack? A Soundtrack by Twitch beta is a new tool made specifically for Twitch creators to feature licensed music within their live streams, while also creating a new way for musicians to be discovered by the Twitch community. Stream worry-free. Soundtrack's vast library of songs are all cleared for worldwide listening on your live Twitch channel. We've got the music covered. You focus on doing what you do best. Which I don't know. I don't know about that mentality. I think as I was saying before, I think it's a good idea to give us the ability to kind of self-curate, I guess. I think that would be cool. Highly curated music library. From pulse-pounding electronic and dance in our Sound Plus playlist to chilled-out lo-fi and instrumental beats in beats to stream to, the Soundtrack library has a range of artists and genres to stream with. Playlists and stations are curated by the Twitch Music Curation team, streamers, artists, and industry partners to make sure whatever style of music you're looking to add to your stream is ready for you to press play. That's an interesting bit. So, the list of folk that they've got in there has a bit of subtext to it. So, the curation that they're going with, Twitch Music Curation teams, that's obviously an internal team. Streamers, I'm assuming that's going to be locked down to partners at the moment, but who fucking knows. Artists and industry partners. So I imagine they'll have a few featured artists, and the industry partners will be the distributors and publishers themselves, who presumably will be able to pay a bit of a fee to then land in those featured lists. Which, you know, in terms of a company attempting to make revenue isn't necessarily a bad idea, and is absolutely the norm, I guess. Join the Soundtrack beta waitlist. Our goal is to make Soundtrack available to as many creators as possible as quickly as possible. Please join the waitlist if you're interested, and we'll notify you when Soundtrack beta is available for download. So that's applicable to Streamlabs, OBS, and Twitch Studio, based on what they provided in the other bit. And we're just going to so, like I said, there's absolutely no mention in any of this being able to integrate for console users at this point, which fucking sucks, to be honest. But at the very least, so around with streaming off the laptop for the D&D stuff and the Vampire the Masquerade stuff. So I'm hoping that I can get kind of a cheeky look using Streamlabs OBS doing those, which will be cool. It'll be super background, so I've got to pay attention to what's going on. The narrative role-playing type thingies. But yeah, it'll be cool to jump in and have a crack at that. OBS itself, I'm going to fucking avoid like the plague. Last time I attempted to use it was for my my failed music stream for the Play Music on the Porch Day, and oh, my CPU just really did not like it, so I doubt I'll be going through that. Let's do a little dance while we go through the rest of this here. Do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight, get down tonight. Alrighty. We've done that. Alright, see Soundtrack Live. I haven't checked that out yet, that'll be cool. Download and install Soundtrack. If you want to try the beta version of Soundtrack, please join the waitlist and we'll notify you when the Soundtrack beta is available for download. Once you get the email, download Soundtrack beta, run the installer, and sign into the Twitch account you want to use to stream. Our Soundtrack product is currently only available on PC and compatible with OBS. We'll make future releases of Soundtrack compatible with Twitch Studio and Streamlabs OBS. So they're going to do the compatibility for those. It'll be on third-party developers or whatever to then build something to build compatibility in, is what that's sounding like. Important. Once Soundtrack is installed, running OBS will reveal a new source, Soundtrack by Twitch. Mix minus... what? Again with the punctuation. Once Soundtrack is installed, running OBS will reveal a new source. Soundtrack by Twitch mix minus is available. I'm assuming that entire piece of text is what will show up. Once added to your sources, this source and the OBS plugin that Soundtrack installs for you will seamlessly route Soundtrack's music to your live channel while preventing it from being recorded to your stream archives. In a future update, we'll also remove music live streamed from with Soundtrack from clips. This is important, and they cover it a little bit further down. This allows you to use Soundtrack worry-free and makes your recorded material safe for later viewing or use on other services. Also important, and we'll rip into that when they mention it a bit further down the track there. So minimum requirements is Windows 10 only, 2 gig of RAM, 40 gig hard disk, CPU dual core, at least 1 megabyte per second of internet, audio internal and or external speaker and or headphones for playability. That's a very vague requirements list, actually. This is my most annoying thing about a lot of folk who build applications nowadays, is if you want to talk about minimum requirements, you've got to go down into driver versions and into actual hardware testing, which will be what the beta is going to be about. So they'll shake out issues with specific hardware as part of that. Report a bug or submit feedback. There's obviously a link to how to do that. Submit your music to Soundtrack. This is where it gets cool for artists, right? So there are a few ways to submit music to Soundtrack. Independent artists and labels can submit their music using one of Soundtrack's preferred distributors, DistroKid or SoundCloud. Both of which are probably the two biggest-ish, or two of the bigger distributors for independent artists in the first place. So that's kind of cool. These partners provide the ability for artists who submit their music to Soundtrack to indicate that they are a Twitch creator, and this information will be sent to the Twitch music curation team that reviews all music for editorial consideration. Additional Soundtrack distributor options are AlphaPup, Believe, CD Baby, DigDis, Empire, Label Engine, LabelWorks, Songtrader, Soundstripe, and United Masters. Artists signed with the following labels working with Soundtrack can request their label to submit their music to Soundtrack. What? That must be further down in this same thing. That's interesting. So basically the way labels work is they submit your tracks to consuming services on your behalf. Generally they'll have the rights for the distribution, I think it is. It's generally part of the labeling kind of package. If a creator submits their music to Soundtrack, does that mean it will be featured? Music in Soundtrack is curated, which means submitting a track does not guarantee that it will be added. Our team makes a considerable effort, however, to include music from Twitch creators when curating playlists and stations. Twitch creators should highly consider distributing to Soundtrack via DistroKid or SoundCloud due to the Twitch creator feature these preferred distributors have, as described in the Q&A above, which will be a legitimate thing. So if it's easy enough for you as a musician to go into where you fucking publish and distribute your music independently, click a fucking button and have that automatically fed in for consideration in the curation, that's brilliant. And presumably you'll also be able to actually link your actual Twitch account if you have one, which will then flag it for you being part of the Twitch platform, which I assume is what they're going to use to kind of not prioritize but shortlist streamers being part of those. It's a feedback loop. It's the community helping itself out, and that aspect of it is going to be kind of cool. How can labels or distributors request to have their music added to Soundtrack? Labels and distributors who would like to request to contribute music to Soundtrack can submit a help ticket here or email a request to contact Soundtrack at Twitch TV. So the mob I went through for distribution of my track, they're not listed, right? So I've kind of sent them in this direction to get them to do that. I've also got that track up on SoundCloud, so I should be able to muck around with punching it in through there, which will be cool. I'm curious to see how it works. Who can use Soundtrack? Our goal is to make Soundtrack available to as many creators as possible, as quickly as possible. It's just repeating what it said earlier. Please join the waitlist for interest, and we'll notify you when Soundtrack Beta is available for download. I hope it doesn't go on as long as fucking Uber Eats out here. We're too far out of town for Uber Eats. It's so annoying. It's not even that far. It's literally a 15-minute drive. It's the worst. Can I use Soundtrack on a Mac computer? Our Soundtrack product is currently only available on PC, which is going to burn a lot of the same musicians that they're then going to want to try and feed their music in to Soundtrack itself. So Apple has a fairly large chunk of the musician market because GarageBand. Are there geographic restrictions to using Soundtrack? Also, I imagine the mechanics of how it works are going to be a little bit trickier to get across the line in Apple's garden than elsewhere. There are geographic restrictions to using Soundtrack. All content licensed for Soundtrack is worldwide in scope. Twitch creators and their communities can share this music together anywhere they happen to be, in accordance with our terms of service, community guidelines, and music guidelines, which is a thing. So the way that licensing works is regional. Having a worldwide license to cover it means that it's not an issue if you have viewers from fucking Delhi tune in, or what the fuck ever. So it sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily. So it's good that it is worldwide. Will music from Soundtrack be embedded in my clips and VODs? When set up properly, this is an important one, right? Will music from Soundtrack be embedded in my clips and VODs? When set up properly as a separate audio source in your live streaming software, e.g. OBS, music from Soundtrack, there's a word missing, will play on your live stream and will not be included in your VODs. So they've kind of not actually answered part of the question, which is interesting for a couple of reasons. So, alright, we'll come back to that because one of the next questions kind of goes through the details a bit more specifically. What live streaming software is Soundtrack compatible with? Beta Soundtrack product is currently only available with OBS. We're working to make future releases of Soundtrack compatible with Twitch Studio and Streamlabs OBS. How does Soundtrack work? This is one to pick apart. The licenses Twitch secured allow Twitch to make the music and other materials in Soundtrack, which will be the artwork associated with the music and potentially lyrics. Stay tuned, Twitch Sings crowd. To make the music and other materials in Soundtrack available for you to use in live streams on your Twitch channel. That last bit's important. Available for you to use in live streams on your Twitch channel. Music and other materials made available through Soundtrack have not been licensed for your use in pre-recorded content, in content that can be streamed on demand, such as VODs and clips, or outside the Twitch services. We've built functionality into Soundtrack that's intended to remove the music and other materials licensed for your use in live streams from archives of those streams. When properly downloaded and installed and used in accordance with our terms of service, music from Soundtrack is not captured in your stream archives or clips. Routing music from Soundtrack into your primary audio feed or otherwise including music or other materials from Soundtrack in on-demand content constitutes a violation of our terms of service. So, breaking that down, it comes down to the way that licensing is structured for the use of music. It's far easier, as I was saying before. There've been a bunch of improvements, right, on this in general. The way licensing works for live streams, you can do a lot more easily with that. If it's pre-recorded, if it's available on demand, that's a different story. And I don't recall the reasoning for it. I'm almost certain it has to do with a relatively recent agreement that's been applied to live streams. So I was mentioning before, so at the moment, Aramco here in Australia, the rights collection agency, and Ditto Music, the folk I did the distribution of my stupid song through. They've put up a bunch of information. Oh, g'day, Snez, how we doing? I'm in the middle of a massive spiel about this new Twitch soundtrack thing. So stick around if you have any kind of interest in that. So Amco, the rights collection mob here, and Ditto Music, the distributor I went through, they've got a bunch of info up. Basically, what that boils down to is that I can sit here and I couldn't sit here, but that will be part two. I could live stream out a cover of a song without having to go and procure individual licenses, possibly only on certain platforms, and I think it would be YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, all of which have stuff running on them that will then pick up what actual song it is, link to the rights holders of that song so that they get royalties against each live view of that information. Pre-recorded and on-demand stuff is excluded from that info as well, but there's not a lot of info I've found on why specifically. I assume that that's because that content still requires a proper sync license, right? So I'd need to have a bit of a muck around with it to be certain, but I'm pretty sure that if you went with someone like Pretzel Rocks, for example, because they acquire legitimate full sync licenses from the artists that have music on there, that content, that music can go onto that pre-recorded or on-demand stuff. I'm not going to say that for sure. I need to go have another look over their terms and suss it out. But I'm pretty sure that would be the case. What that means though is dual streaming out to YouTube and Twitch might, for example, or Facebook, might become a little bit more complicated in terms of what happens to that audio feed. Someone probably cleverer than I, and ideally an audio engineer, might have to kind of pull apart how that works and whether or not the Twitch soundtrack feed goes to the second source in the first place, or if it's kind of locked into the Twitch live stream. What's weird in that last little bit is that they say that provided you download it properly and use it correctly, it will be removed from both VODs and clips, but they've also said in another section that it's currently only working for the archives. So I'm not 100% sure how that would work for clips that are created while you're streaming live. So if you create a clip out of an archived video, that should work because it's not going to pick up the feed. If you have a clip created while live and you've got that music running, don't know. We'll have to have a look at that and see how it works. So that's probably one of the more complicated parts of it, and one of the bits that I enjoy pulling apart. How exactly does the licensing work? How do the mechanics of how they're making it a thing work in the first place, right? Can I use the music from soundtrack on other platforms? No. The licenses Twitch secured allow Twitch to make these materials available for you to use in live streams on your Twitch channel. Music and other materials made available through Soundtrack have not been licensed for your use outside the Twitch services. Which will be an interesting one, because if you can use those same tracks on those platforms and you're not using Soundtrack to feed it through, I don't know how that will fucking play out. That could probably be the messiest part of it, I think, to kind of work out. We're gonna need some light in here because it's dark as shit. How can my viewers interact with soundtracks? So this is the cool thing, particularly for fucking artists, right? Snaz have an awesome opportunity to take away from third-party softwares and help console streamers, but it's a half-assed attempt. Console's going to be interesting because there's no mention at this point of integration for console streamers, and I highly doubt for at least this generation that there would be. So next gen, maybe. At this stage, it's locked to OBS, and the reason for that will be because you can then add the source that soundtrack sort of is separately through PC streaming software, which is kind of a limitation on the way that current gen consoles are set up and able to stream in the first place. I'm hoping that there's a shift with the next gen stuff that kind of gets us over that particular line. That would be super fucking cool. Like if we could have if I could have a PS5 fucking Streamlabs OBS type setup, for example, that would be awesome. That said, I stream natively from the box, so if you're using a capture card and doing it that way, that's no longer an issue. So there are certainly options for console streamers as well. How can my viewers interact with soundtrack? This is going to be the best bit for the artists side of things. We've partnered with a company called Linkfire to promote the artists you hear on soundtrack. We've included a music promotion feature that allows viewers to interact with currently playing songs and add them to their favorite music streaming services, which is probably the perfect way to do that. So I've rambled on before about how this kind of thing might work, and I was kind of talking about the idea of a direct integration with one of the bigger players, right? So they were always going to avoid YouTube because that's a direct competitor. If they did some kind of direct integration with Spotify is one of the biggest players in terms of music streaming. Ideally, if you're watching a stream and you dig a song, you want to be able to click on something that says, yep, this is the song, add it to my stuff, right? Doing it this way means you can do that, but you can do it across your preferred music streaming platform, which is absolutely the best way to do it for the folk who are listening. Snez says, this will be awesome. Hoping PS5 has more streaming capabilities. We'll see. Dipping out again. Much love. Thank you for the dip in. I appreciate it. Does soundtrack work on mobile? We're bringing music promotions to mobile in the very near future. Once that's enabled, viewers watching your channel on their mobile devices will be able to interact with soundtrack to view the information about what music is playing and add tracks to their favorite music streaming services. So rephrased, the music will come through. We won't be able to interact with it on the mobile app for a bit. That'll be down the line. Can I create my own custom playlists and stations? Playlists and stations are curated by Twitch music curation staff, as well as select streamers and industry partners. At launch, multiple curated playlists and stations will be available for creators to use. Soundtrack will continue to expand and evolve over time based on community feedback. If there was one thing I was going to suggest to other folk in streamy land to feedback, it would be to give us some more direct control over what playlists and stations go into our own streams. Like, the curation thing is cool and it can work. Like, fucking Mog was one of the best music streaming services I've ever come across. And the reason that was the case was because of the curation. They just had a brilliant fucking team of people that put together ridiculously good playlists and linked styles of songs and artists together in such a way that the discovery part of it was just fucking brilliant. I've not found a single service that's worked as well for me in terms of, yeah, cool, this is the next kind of song that I wanted to listen to ever, really. But so curation can work, and it can work well, but at the end of the day, we're going to want, particularly for, you want to be able to create your own kind of in-jokes and stuff using the music as a tool, as part of that. So there's going to be plenty that we'll be able to do with it, and I'd expect that to change fairly soonish down the track. What will my viewers see if I have soundtrack live on my channel? Real estate. Here we go. Viewers will see soundtrack as a video overlay at the bottom of your video. Soundtrack will by default be hidden. but will appear for 7 seconds when a song ends and a new song begins. Viewers can roll over soundtrack and click to expand if they're interested in learning more about an artist they hear. If the artist has a Twitch channel, viewers will be able to follow that channel. All of that wiring together of stuff is fucking gold, right? Especially you have an artist that has a Twitch channel, bang, you can follow the artist. That's brilliant. In terms of analytics, that's also going to be very cool as a new way for artists to then kind of have, and so this is the thing, like streaming has been this largely, not untappable, but difficult to constructively approach audience for musicians for ages, with the exception of, super big fucking DJ streamers and shit. It's gonna be awesome. It'll be cool. And I like that wiring together of stuff, and I like that it's kind of hidden and then will pop up as part of it. And I imagine that you'll get like all of the bots and alert stuff will find a way to feed it in different ways as well. What is the difference between stations and playlists? Playlists are a set list of curated tracks covering various genres, moods, and themes in which creators can play the tracks in order, shuffled, or repeatedly. Stations can endlessly play a larger set of tracks from specified genres and are always shuffled. That's pretty sensible and pretty standard. Does Twitch plan to add more music to soundtrack? Absolutely. Stay tuned. They will be having conversations with the larger distributors and labels and stuff. They'll be the difficult conversations to have. I imagine those conversations will be a little easier to have once they've actually got stats from the early stages of it to say, this is your actual listen account, this is the royalty payment that you're going to be getting as a rights holder for X track. At which point then it'll kind of blow up properly, I think. What additional features are you working on? Soundtrack will continue to evolve and improve over time based on what resonates most with streamers and their communities. Expect more playlists by Twitch and third parties, such as streamers, artists and more, covering an expanded range of genres, themes and use cases. There will be tons of great new content and more ways to listen to and interact with your new favourite artists. So the artist lists and stuff is pretty standard for any music streaming service. They'll go out to a bunch of artists, give them the opportunity to put together playlists, which will be cool. And I imagine they'll have a pretty strong focus on artists in the Twitch community itself, which is cool still. There's no issue with doing it that way. It's a good way to do it. The list, right? So if you are someone who makes music, this is the important bit for you to know, I guess, right? Because this is how you get your shit into the system for consideration, I guess. Which labels and distributors have contributed music to soundtrack? So what that suggests, and you'd have to speak to each of these individually to be certain, but it's possible their full libraries aren't actually available and that they've only made some available, and we'll see how that turns out. I'm sure one or the other of them will explain it, the details of their agreement. So we have, I'm not going to know how to pronounce some of these, so deal with it. Alpha Pop, Anjuna Beats, CD Baby, Chilled Cow, Chill Hop, Chill Your Mind, Create Music Group, Dig Dis, Dim Mac New Noise, DistroKid, Empire, Future Classic, Hospital Records, Inner Cat Music Group, Insomniac, Label Works, Monster Cat, MXM Tune, Ninja Tune, Nuclear Blast, Playara, Plus Music, Pop Gang Records, Pure Noise Records, Porter Robinson, Rhymesayers, Sad Boy Records, Caesar Mist, Sharptone Records, Song Trader, Sonosuite, SoundCloud, Soundstripe, Symphonic Distribution, Text Me Records, United Masters, Westwood Recordings. Labels I don't have a massive amount of knowledge about. The ones that do kind of suggest that this is going to have legs and it'll go pretty well. You've got Song Trader, which does a lot of cover song licensing. So they're pretty well established. They'll have a fairly large library and good connections with artists and the industry, I guess, out of that, which will be cool. SoundCloud obviously is massive for kind of the independent artist crowd to be able to use that, and so SoundCloud is one of the two that has a direct click here to feed straight in, which is brilliant. Same with DistroKid. Um, and then what was the other one? Soundstripe. I think I've seen stuff on fairly recently. They seem to be pretty good. And CD Baby. Uh, DistroKid and CD Baby, I think, are the two probably longer established distributors. So both of those will be able to carry this home just by themselves for the most part, which is awesome. And they've got like instructions for uploading music to preferred distributors' sites. However, they've only got actual instructions for DistroKid, um, which I don't use. I'm more inclined to use SoundCloud for that version. So yeah, that's it. That's the rundown on the announcement and the helpy stuff for Twitch's soundtrack